And I'm starting the intro, Addy. And I just realized that the reason that George isn't here with us, Addy, is
Yeah.
because I didn't send him the link. So
Oh,
while we were playing the intro, I went and checked my DMs, and he was asking for the link. So I'm sure that he'll be here any second now. So
excellent.
my apology to George Webb. My producer is out running an errand, and I'm here by myself right now. And how are you doing, Addy?
I'm doing good. I love how you referred to your friend as your producer. I love that. You do have a producer. I need a producer.
Yeah,
That'd be nice.
producer Carrie. Yeah, producer Carrie is out running errands, and she'll be back. So when she comes in through the door, you'll all see her,
Sweet.
because that's the only way into my place. Uh, I guess we'll stretch while we're waiting for George. Let's make sure he got this.
Sure,
Ding,
sure. Yeah.
la di la di da.
Going to be talking about Ukraine and bioweapons, a specialty of George Webb's. Oh, there he is. I think he just joined.
He did,
I was reading about Uncle Louis, which we can talk about maybe, which I'm sure George knows about him.
and we can. Here, we'll bring him up, and then George can. Hey, George, I apologize. I forgot to send the link.
Oh, then didn't know if you were trying to tell me something. No, hey, no, it's great. Hey, Eddie, how you doing?
Good, George. Good. How are you doing, sir? How's your
Good.
week?
It's great. I'm catching you guys in the middle of something, so keep going to what you were talking about, and I'll join as I hear.
I was stretching. I was making lame excuses for why I hadn't sent you the link. And, I was trying to kind of tangentially say that it was because my producer, Carrie, wasn't here. And that's quite obviously not even the case. So, um,
Well, what have you guys been talking about? What did I miss?
well, I was talking about the dialectic today. There's a tweet that Ted Lieu did yesterday, and he said here's his nonsense tweet. He said the fundamental problem with this preachy New York Times opinion editorial is the assumption that there are both sides to everything. That is false. The Earth is not flat. COVID vaccines don't have microchips. Trump didn't win the 2020 election. I will not coddle folks who have dumb ideas. And there was a moment in time when I would look at a tweet like that and it would just make me angry and I wouldn't exactly understand why. But now I understand how dialectic works. And so what I tweeted out in response was, here's how the dialectic works. You can either be smart and agree with Ted, or you can be dumb. Those are the only two choices in the entire universe. And clearly, you could probably spend half a day picking apart the stupidity of this tweet. But Addy's comment was that he thought that it was dumb, and my comment back to him was that I thought that it was smart because it was targeted at dumb people. See, you have to understand who the audience is. If you understand the audience, then you realize what I think it's a genius tweet. Okay.
Ted knows his audience.
Yeah, Ted knows it. Ted knows his audience. Right. Exactly.
Ask me about the awards.
Okay.
Ask me about the awards. There you go.
So anyway, so that's my new kind of like bailiwick, and I was telling Carrie this morning that I used to watch shows like Bill Maher, and I would marvel at how Andrew Breitbart or Ann Coulter or those people or Ben Shapiro could go on their shows and they would, basically spar with those people in real time and how they could come up with all of those arguments in real time. And it wasn't until I started studying psychology and kind of breaking down the structure of the way that the arguments are made that I could actually understand how those people could respond in real time. And now I think that if I was put in a situation like that, I probably would do pretty good. Although doing shows like this is good practice.
Hey, Addy, can I ask you a favor? One of you guys, could you tweet this out? Because then I'll retweet it. And
Yeah, I think I tweeted it. I think Peter did too.
Yeah, I tweeted it. I'll send you a link to the tweet that I already tweeted out. But your volume is a little low, George.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna pay attention to volume and audio today because last week I didn't, and I was clipping. And
okay, how's that? Better?
Yeah. So, yes.
Okay.
So if we have problems in the audio, tell us in the live chat, because if you're telling us in the comments below, we don't see it until later. All right, so job is to find, George, the tweet for this show, and here it is. And I will DM this to you in Twitter.
Oh, great. Well, I just want to say one quick thing about Ted Lieu, other than ask me about the Awans, Ted Lieu, the famous bumper stickers that somebody like Peter Duke, I don't think it was Peter Duke, but I think it was somebody like Peter Duke that was putting stickers on things like I have clean hands all over Los Angeles. But anyway, that's somebody else. It's not Peter, which I thought was really funny. People who didn't even know their congressman liked that, with the BlackBerry. But Ted Lieu dropped his BlackBerry in a toilet. Who does that?
Right.
I guess if you're really, really drunk or something, or you really something else, who drops their BlackBerry in a toilet? It's an obvious, hey, I don't have a BlackBerry anymore. You can't hold anything against me. There's no records. I didn't talk to the Awans. They didn't work for me. Oh, yeah, they did. Like 6 of them did. But that's okay. Let's forget about it.
Yeah, it's interesting, George, because Addy and I are gonna talk to Johnny Vedmore after we're done with you today, and I was catching up on my Johnny Vedmore stuff, and the first chapter of his 2-part series on Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum talks about Schwab's involvement in the South African nuclear program. And whenever you say South African nuclear program, I'm always thinking, well, is that Mark Rich? And I'm trying to remember the George Webb of it and trying to figure out whether or not that Mark Rich was involved. And then that also makes me think of Mark Kulak's work on Robert Swan Mueller II, because wasn't he trafficking or dealing in metal for nuclear programs? And so I was thinking maybe there needed to be a powwow between George Webb, Mark Kulak, and Johnny Vedmore, just checking notes on the South African nuclear industry.
Now Johnny Vedmore is in South Africa, or just covers?
He's in Welsh, I believe.
He's in Wales.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay, but on Unlimited Hangout, he's got a series called Schwab Family Values.
I just did a dictation of it. It's about an hour dictation, half an hour silent read. Really well done. Bona fide investigative researcher and journalist, Johnny Vedmore. So it should be fun to talk to him. I think at 7 Eastern we're going to talk.
Yeah, and he goes deep like Mark Kulak into the documents, and I'm going to ask him if he speaks German, because a lot of the stuff is German that he's quoting.
Do you know what city he lives in, Addy, in Wales, by any chance?
I don't. I don't. No.
Because there's a city, it's out toward Wales, and Berkshire is not Wales, the Queen's Berkshire, Queen's land, but the atomic weapons establishment is actually not far from Wales, where all the nuclear weapons in the UK are made, and that's going to lead to our show a little bit later. The atomic weapons establishment. If you thought that you needed to establish a community for the atomic weapons community, sometimes you just go straight out and say, hey guys, I'm done with the word finding here. Let's just call it the atomic weapons establishment. Aw. Let's just call it aw.
Aw.
That's what they called it. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, so you're not making that up.
I'm not making that up.
You're making it into.
And you have to say it like that. Aw. It's got to be a long thing.
By the way, Addy and I came up with this thing today, George, for you. So, like, when you really want to, spin out, here we're going to do this. Watch. Do you see the screen?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh, look, you got to look on the screen here, George.
He's hallucinating.
I don't see it.
So
you don't see it?
You don't see anything running across the bottom of the screen?
Oh, I see the ticker. High octane speculation. Yes.
There you go. All right.
Well,
So
this is
this is how we're going to not get banned, George. Okay. You just
George
give
is
us the
actually-
high sign and we'll throw the lower third in there and then, we'll be good, right?
Yeah, well,
Aw.
here's
Well,
all though. There is the real law. See,
Yeah.
they just said that we deliver nuclear weapons is the first thing I read.
Shock and awe. And you cannot make this stuff up. I wish I could have high octane speculation.
I think your volume is still a little low, George, but
It's
yeah.
still a little low. I don't know what I can do.
You
I
could-
can hear you just fine. You might have to turn your volume up, Peter.
Maybe I'll turn my volume up.
Give
here.
us
I
a
don't-
5 by on the audience. Hopefully people can hear us okay. Who sounds the best? Who sounds the worst? How we doing?
Okay. So yeah, it's shock and awe. And the reason why so goes awe, so goes Q. Because the Q clearances go with awe. And if you want to get a Q clearance for either bioweapons or nuclear weapons, before you can ever get to Q and Q clearance, you got to have awe, right? And usually what they do is get you into the awe program, get you a clearance for nukes, because there's a lot more peaceful uses for nukes. And once I get you into awe and get you the Q clearance, then I move you over to doing the bio stuff. And that's the fundamental thesis for this whole day here is awe is the way the British bioweapons plant happened under Q clearance. And you're not going to believe the connections to Christopher Steele in this thing either.
I'm not. And somebody said that I'm a little hot, so I've turned my mic down a little. So maybe at least we're all on the same level now. And then I think I can adjust the headphone volume on my mic too. Too much information for everybody, I know.
Well, here's awe on Twitter, awe_PLC. Keeping the nation safe. UK's nobody's following them, I know, so I'm gonna give them a follow.
Yeah. So
we're about ready to have a nuclear war in you can't. And nobody's following them.
And nobody's following them on Twitter.
So George,
we don't want to know what awe is doing.
So George, I know that this will give like the Jason Goodman fans out there in the world something to really like sink their teeth into. But I think I've told you this before, but my mother was one of the Q clearance librarians at the Rand Corporation in Santa Monica. And the only thing that I ever knew about her having that job was that's what her job was. Like she never talked about it, except for all the smart men she knew, because she liked all the smart men.
Well, and then she had her son, and then she said, "I've done it. I've got a smarter man than any of them." So this is a mother's dream.
There's a couple of us too. Yeah.
Oh, there's a couple of you. Your sisters would be brilliant as well.
Yeah.
So this is the big idea here, and I want to ask, what's the gentleman's name again that you're interviewing?
Johnny Vedmore.
I want to ask Johnny if he would be so kind as to drive up to, and just take a picture, stand outside like Addy does with his and I do with mine. Hey, I'm out here outside. Oh, we're about ready to have a nuclear war. Wouldn't it be great to know where they're coming from and where they're made? Here I am. That sort of thing. And it's in a place, it begins with Alder. And
Aldermaston. It is in Berkshire.
I was watching an interview with Addy, with Johnny prepping for the show, and he was talking to somebody in Wales where he was, and that's not the name of the town. So we can ask him though when we.
Well, Aldermaston is the old RAF base, but Newbury. I went to Oxford a few times, and I went down toward Andover, and in between was Newbury. So Newbury is where the is, and I'll never be able to say the word again in a normal way. But Newbury is where it is, And so Christopher Steele lives right there in between there and Salisbury, Salisbury steak, right? Everybody knows Salisbury steak, but everybody probably also knows Stonehenge in Salisbury or near Salisbury, right? Well, that's also where Porton Down is. That's where all the bioweapons are made. So this is my point here: is the nukes are never far from the bios, and Christopher Steele is literally right in the middle. And I'll do some connections to in a little bit.
Yep. Well, Johnny goes deep into Ravensburg and the connection between Switzerland and Germany, and then Schwab's father. Schwab went to the Kennedy School, which is where he was discovered by Henry Kissinger, and but he kind of goes deep into plutonium and Pretoria here. So there's a lot of connections to all of these things. And when I was reading this, I was just wondering about the overlap between, like I said, between your information about Mark Rich, and then Mark's understanding of Robert Swan Mueller the second, and trying to figure out if they knew each other. Did they do business with one another?
They most certainly did. The guy who was in charge of taking over the prosecution of Mark Rich was one James Comey. And Robert Mueller was the head of the during the whole time of the cover-up and the kicking the can down the road. He was the director of the FBI. And when you mentioned the dark weapons, South Africa was with the apartheid, right? They wanted to study these dark weapons. There was this guy named Wouter Basson, not high octane speculation. That wasn't his name. His name was Wouter, like woofer, like a subwoofer. Basson, like a bass subwoofer, Basson, Wouter Basson. And he was looking for a genetically targeted, sound familiar? If you live in Odessa, genetically targeted bioweapon, Wouter Basson. So they called it the Black Bomb. That's how they say it in Afrikaans down there, the Black Bomb. And that was Wouter Basson. So that was Mark Rich with all that information. And then you had the nuclear information. What do you do with plutonium used as normally a trigger in war? Well, you don't need it for peacetime use for reactors. You only can put it in Sputnik type devices when you send it out into space. So really, then it just becomes a kind of a thing that you spend a lot of money to put away into the earth somewhere.
Because 1 part per billion will give you cancer, right?
200 times more radioactive than uranium. But what?
And when people are talking about free radicals, right? Plutonium releases free radicals. Is that correct?
Big time.
Yeah.
And the gamma radiation. I went to Piketon. All these people are dying because they said, hey, these tanks that are coming in from the old nuclear program of Russia, they're supposed to send 20,000 downblend 20,000 warheads. They're full of plutonium poisoning here. We're dying from all these transuranics, which is things beyond in the chemical chart beyond 235, right? So no high octane speculation here at all. You use plutonium as a trigger to start an initial explosion to then start a secondary explosion with uranium in the conventional atomic bombs. So what do you do with all these nuclear triggers? They made them in South Carolina. They made them down there at I can't remember. I'll think of the name in a second.
The Krytron triggers, is that what you're talking about?
Well, Krytron triggers are used, and the great journalist, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting his name. I had 2 conversations with him.
Sweetheart. His name was Sweetheart. He meant something to you.
No, it was, it was the great journalist. I did Abu Ghraib.
What's his name?
Oh, Seymour Hersh.
Seymour Hersh did the Krytron story, where if you have 100 igniters in an implosion type device, you need to have all the explosions happen almost simultaneously within a millionth of a second of each other. And the Krytron was the thing that would balance the electrical impulse to make sure that the implosion happened all simultaneously. But in the original gun type bomb, that the Nagasaki, Hiroshima type bombs, I think it was one or the other. You first exploded plutonium and then it triggered the uranium. So you could take these plutonium triggers about the size of a baseball, right? I went to a couple of the plants where they made them, Ford now and near Cincinnati and a couple of other ones. and you can put them in ships, and you can take them with the South African Navy. You can go to Antarctica, and you can drop them like a mine, and you can do underwater testing. It sounds and feels like a little bit of an earthquake. And there was a couple of events, the blue flash of light that you have with a nuclear explosion. There was a couple of blue flashes of light near Antarctica. A lot of people immediately looked at Mark Rich.
Was it near New Schwabia by any chance?
Well, there is a Rothschild Island down there. I didn't believe that to be true, but there actually is a
So
Rothschild
the Rothschild Island is the Rothschild Island in New Schwabia?
Well, it could be. I wrote a book, by the way, on most of the stuff you covered here called "Schwab Me No More." About a year ago, "Schwab Me No More." The flamethrower guy, Escher Weiss. You know, his dad made flamethrowers for Hitler. Klaus Schwab's dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Johnny Vedmore talks about that in this article. Yeah.
And the whole Kissinger connection to Royal Dutch Shell, all that's all in there. So anyway, yeah, it would be a great guy to talk to, I think. Yeah.
The triggers you mentioned, those are different from Krytron. And then what city were they in South Carolina, George?
It's on the Savannah River, and I'll come up with it in a second. I went by it and did a show there, but it's a little small town on the Savannah River, and it's fuel fouled, and the people are all mad at the Atomic Energy Commission, and they built a huge thing that was supposed to process plutonium because it is such a problem. And it's been 3 or 4 years since I did the story, but there was this reactor that they were supposed to build that was sort of a breeder reactor that would not only use this energy for nuclear power, but then it also would remove the risk of the plutonium, because the terrorists really want to get to the plutonium. The uranium if they have to, but plutonium to sure win. So I'll get to it. It's Savannah River Site is what it's called, SRS. Okay. I don't know what, it's a national laboratory. I don't know what city it's in.
Okay, I can pull it up here really quickly. I wanted to mention too, last week on our chat on Rockfin, we actually got some tips, or I got some tips on my Rockfin, but it was with the chat with Peter and George, and there was a shout out from the Convo Couch saying George Webb, hell yeah, what's up, Addy? So I forgot to mention that last week. I'm still remembering to check the Rockfin chat as well, and then Billiam, username Billiam, also gave a tip. So thank you to those guys and the people at the Convo Couch for the support.
Absolutely. And support Addy in any way you can. He's an up-and-coming journalist that really is getting out there, getting off his grandmother's couch, right? So the Couch Convo guys, if you really want to support somebody, you could do no better than going and supporting Addy. He's on the move. He's on the move.
I went from grandma's couch to the Convo Couch in a short period of time. Is amazing. But located on land in Aiken, Allendale, and Barnwell counties, adjacent to the Savannah River, southeast of Augusta, is the Savannah River Site, U.S. Department of Energy reservation. And you mentioned Piketon, George. I wanted to mention, too, because we met up there last year for a charrette. The middle school there, or a middle school there, was shuttered in 2019 because they found radioactive material. I think it was in the air, if I'm not mistaken, but it's been found in sediment and like the feces of animals nearby as well. But as far as I know, that middle school is still shuttered because of that. In Piketon. It's a very, I want to say too, it was a really interesting experience going there because it felt so abandoned. Like I saw a house, I remember driving with Wes, I saw a house that was like completely abandoned, and just learning about how all those jobs disappeared, and now much of the county is in poverty, I think, or at least certainly worse off.
It's interesting how that stuff happens. I know that, or people could fact check me. Okay, this isn't high octane speculation, but this is my memory, and we all know that memories are flawed. I think that Malibu High School was flattened and rebuilt because they determined that it was on a brownfield, and that so many people were dying there of cancer, teachers specifically, and I think the principal actually died of cancer. And it's kind of in the shadow of a Hughes aircraft research facility that sits up on the hill there and kind of overlooks all of Malibu. It's it's an interesting, weird correlation there.
Well, I remember one Peter Struck. Actually, Peter Struck. No, not Peter Struck. I remember one Peter Duke telling me a story where he said, this is what he told me, not high octane speculation. He was looking up on a hill one day and he saw a huge flame come out, like a Saturn V had been turned on its nose and was firing off into the sky. He even thought it was Rocketdyne doing that testing. Because
the Chatsworth Hills, yeah. I think that I was talking to somebody later that said that they didn't think that they turned the engines upside down. They just laid them on their side, and there was a 45-degree blast deflector that would just shoot the flame up into the sky at Chatsworth. Yeah, that was.
Well, what's really cool is I met somebody whose father worked at a facility like that in the Redstone Arsenal, and that's how they did all the testing of and he tested Saturn V's there. And I know Addy's been to the Georgia Guidestones. Ready? Give me the high octane speculation zipper here. Can I get the high octane speculation?
Yeah,
zipper?
we got to go. Here we go. There we go.
There we go. High octane special. The Georgia Guidestones, the hole there, von Braun wanted to make that secret. He thought that there was such strategic technology with the F1 assembly and rocket that they were going to test it there, and maybe did test it there. And Kennedy said, no, this is going to be an open program, civilian program. We're going to do it at Redstone Arsenal. So what did they do when Werner von Braun died? They filled it in with concrete and made the Georgia Guidestones. Rumor. That's high octane speculation. But why else would there be a thing right there? Why else would von Braun and all these Nazis buy land out there by the University of Georgia? It's a lot closer to Cape Canaveral. Right? Look at all the rocket programs that von Braun did in Germany. They were all underground. They were all secret. Why would you want to give away all your tech, right, at Redstone Arsenal?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, maybe I should start it again so that we don't get in trouble. There are videos, though, that I've watched where people have kind of done a deep dive on the origin, and there was a bank in town, and there was a guy who came in and bought the land for cash, and it's a corporation, and there's only one known board member, and it's the guy who works at the bank, and it's a big long story. It could be a complete fabrication, but who knows, George? The Georgia Guidestones are certainly a weird thing. But why would you, if you wanted to make it a secret, why would you put something on top of it that would become such a lightning rod of attention?
Well, because it was no longer going to be used. I mean, while he was alive, they still had designs on a separate facility, a sort of a private NASA, up until the day Werner von Braun died. So it's interesting because Ted Turner is talked about as the guy who gave the cash, and he's an original member of the Nuclear Threat Initiative. Why is Ted Turner becoming a member of the Nuclear Threat Initiative, along with a partner by the name of Donald Rumsfeld in 1980? Well, that was 97, but I'm just saying that he wasn't far away from the nuclear. Like
Donald Rumsfeld, who also later became a board member I think he was a board member twice at Rand Corporation, if my memory serves me.
And Gilead, Remdesivir Gilead, I think he was also in Gilead, yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Comment here from Christian. Alberton, Georgia is the granite capital of the world. Elbert County Sheriff's Department actually protects the Georgia Guidestones 24/7. I think they monitor the location there. But yeah, just to clarify, George was talking about before it was released, they were working on these weapons and these projects. They were going to use Elbert County as a testing site, it's like hidden away or tucked away, I guess. So, yeah, and the Granite Museum there, I actually went there with Amber, so that was cool.
So should we talk about what we advertised we were going to talk about today?
Yes.
Let's transition.
Yeah, I'm just thinking we've been letting people come into the room for half an hour, so we should probably
Great.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
It was sparkling, scintillating conversation, so everyone benefits.
It was, and I didn't want to forget to mention the whole Johnny Vedmore, Mark Kulak, George Webb kind of like overlap there with South African nuclear power programs.
And let me throw in on that because Mark Kulak somehow found 3 weeks before Kennedy's assassination, he found where Kennedy is driving onto the tarmac to meet Werner von Braun at Redstone Arsenal in the Lincoln Continental. I think it's the same Lincoln Continental. And he drives straight by the gantry, which is about 60 feet high. And I know Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't there, but if you were a Cuban-trained Operation Mongoose sniper, that was your dream come true that day. And he's got film of it. These are little things that when you get into citizen journalism, you love finding.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. So George and I were talking earlier today, and it just seems that biolabs are popping up in the news cycle everywhere now. And I don't know anybody who's been talking about biolabs for 4.5 or 5 years. But if I had to pick somebody, I don't know where I'd even start to begin to find someone who's been talking about biolabs for 5 years. And it seems like there's an entire kind of a constellation, as it were, and almost like a polygon of biolabs, the research labs, right? Because they're research labs. They're not bioweapons labs. Mm-hmm. And George wanted to kind of do a survey from Wuhan to Ukraine, and then all kinds of other places where they seem to be popping up. And like, what's going on here, George? What do you think?
Well, the polygon you're speaking of, I would include as, I think 4 sides is a polygon, right? Anything more than 3 is, I don't know, maybe it's anything that is a triangle on up. But if you throw in Kazakhstan in there, because that's where BioPreparat, which was the Soviet bioweapons program, was mostly based. A little bit in Ukraine, but that was more of a focus for the nuclear, because it was nuclear power, etc. And then the other location is Georgia, which is a little bit further down on the Black Sea there. And of course, that's another area where there was a lot of focus with the bioweapons. So what happens is the fall of, and I'm going to do this along with Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele flies in a timeline. This is not high-octane speculation. This is just the timeline. Christopher Steele flies in.
Here, I'm going to see if I'm going to see if I can do some graphics, George. Here, hang on a second.
Great. Put us on the side.
Sure. Well, yeah. I don't know how well this will work, but I'm going to try. Okay, here we go.
Well, the first thing about awe is to know. The first thing about awe is to know. Yeah, go to Kazakhstan or Georgia or Ukraine.
Okay, so let me turn on borders here. Borders and maybe labels. Okay. And Kazakhstan's over here, right?
Yep. And it's also their head of their rocket program. The Cosmodrome was in Kazakhstan. Yeah. So Almaty, ALMATY, is the sort of the ground zero. ALMATY, Almaty.
Almaty, I think.
Almaty.
Okay.
Almaty. I think.
If you're in Long Island, it's Almaty.
Oh my gosh, George. Well, I wanted to bring up this article I wrote actually about, because you mentioned Strzok and bioweapons coming up in the news recently, and I noticed, I think it was on the same day that Strzok came after both George and Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi was on Fox News, which I thought was interesting timing. But I wrote a little bit about the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Lab Center, citing astute, trailblazing bioweapons journalists such as George Webb. And I want to mention, I think we would be remiss not to miss Dilyana as well, who we have cited, I think both of us, George. I discovered her work through you.
Absolutely. And I've been following Dilyana since 2017. And she's got the BioLab. She actually went to the Georgia BioLab, which is in Tbilisi. Okay. You can see this was kind of like their Utah, for the Russians. Kazakhstan was kind of like their Utah, where we have our proving grounds in Dugway, Utah. But yeah, we've been following Dilyana, and she had all these papers saying, hey, here's the Tbilisi lab. There's Operation Big Bite, Operation Big Itch, using infested ticks and fleas to transmit bioweapons. This is not a defensive program. Everybody's got State Department diplomatic immunity. not not a defensive program. Okay, they were belching out smoke every night. Everybody's getting sick in the town. Not a defensive program. So that's the background there. But what she is now doing is, when I was on Capitol Hill, I was working on how are they getting the money? Okay, where's the spy rings? We had the Wuhan spy ring. Who are the go-betweens? This Parnas and Fruman. Who's the kingpin paying for all this and getting all the money from Congress? Kolomoisky. What's the bank? Privat bank. Okay, that's how it's getting. Who's he sending over to Almaty? Felix Sater. So we were linking the chain, basically, of all the IP addresses from Adam Schiff and Peter Strzok to these intermediaries all the way to that lab. And she had the inside the lab pictures. She had the interviews of the people there. So it made a nice peanut butter and jelly kind of reporting, and it's still benefiting us to this day. Addy, can you read a little bit about what you found out with your new article?
Yeah, so you mentioned the money at the bottom of the document, which you can easily translate from Russian or Ukrainian. It's from actually the American embassy in Ukraine, so it's from the government. And at the bottom it says the cost of the laboratory required an investment of almost $2 million, $1,935,000 approximately. And it shows the donor being the Department of War, the Department of Defense. And this is called the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Lab Center. So, yeah, I just mentioned here how I translated that. And here we can just go to the original really quickly here. So there it is, see in the Cyrillic alphabet. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That opened up a new page. So pretty easy to do that. I mean, it's not a perfect translation, but not too difficult. The other one that Strzok came after actually was Tucker Carlson. So that's why I thought it was interesting. He came after Tucker Carlson, George, and then what was the other one? Tulsi. And Tulsi and Tucker were talking that day that this happened, which was last week. So just doing a bit of stitching together, some of George and Diliana's work, hopefully in a way that's easy or for people to read.
Well, and they didn't want some nobody being vaulted into fame as the anti-Strzok hero, So I would willingly.
Interesting timing, very interesting timing. It was all in the same day, I remember. Yeah,
I think they probably thought of that after he tweeted me out, because everybody said, you're going to make him into the anti-Strzok hero, and they said, you know what? Let's get Tulsi Gabbard. She's really pretty, and they and smart. And so they literally they got an agent that Strzok used to have as an informant, I believe, in New York, who gave Tulsi Gabbard $60, and on that basis, he questioned her loyalty to the United States as a Russian asset. So, but I think it was just like they realized what they'd done, and they were kind of backtracking. But getting back to Dnipro, the interesting thing about Dnipro is after the coup, 2014, who gets to be the governor of that area? Kolomoisky, right? He's in Dnipro. Remember, the Dnipro River kind of carves east and west with the Ukraine, and all that side of the east side was the side that sided with the Russians, and that's the side they've kind of promised to Kolomoisky. And the west side sided with the Nazis, and that's the side that has the Peter Daszak's dad, was working with, it's pictured with Himmler, with the Silesia Brigade. I don't know if he knew Himmler, but he just pictured.
This sounds like the same kind of bind that the Allies got into after World War I when they promised everything that the Arabs conquered, from Mecca to Damascus, to the Arabs who participated in the Arab Revolt. And then when the war ended, they pulled out the Sykes-Picot Treaty and said, oops, we're not going to give you all of the stuff that we promised you, but instead we'll give you Iraq. And the problem was that Hussein, who they promised everything from Damascus to Mecca to, was Sunni, and Iraq was Shia. And so they took a Sunni guy and they gave him a Shia territory, and that didn't ever really work out very well.
Well, Lawrence of Arabia is the guy who made all those promises. Blow up this train, get this town.
Peter, you got to bring it up. Your connection.
What, to
High
Don't
octane.
you, don't you have a Lawrence of Arabia connection?
I do have a Lawrence of Arabia connection. I went to Wadi Rum in 2010, a couple of weeks before the Arab Spring, and I took a picture of a rock formation in Wadi Rum called Seven Pillars of Wisdom. The name of T.E. Lawrence's famous book is Seven Pillars of Wisdom. And when it was being reprinted by an Indian publisher, they licensed my photograph of the rock formation, Seven Pillars of Wisdom, as the cover of the book.
Oh my!
And maybe I can get my producer, who's back.
You shot the cover of the T.E. Lawrence book?
Seven Pillars of Wisdom, yeah.
Wow, that's one of those uncovered Raiders of the Lost Ark discoveries that I've had today. That's
very
right up there.
thick and brown.
Oh my goodness, that's like, I feel like I've been in a cave and had to do the darts and the rolling ball and the rolling boulder.
I got to tell you, I had a surreal. It was surreal when they called me up and asked me if I wanted to license my picture, because it was having my name associated with his is like, how often is that ever going to happen?
That's awesome.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, so we were on the grand scale there on the Google Earth, right? We were looking at that a minute ago.
Oh, let me bring that up. There we go.
There we go. And can you zoom in to Almaty, to Felix Sater's hot dog shop there in Almaty? Oh, look at that. Go to the big screen, Peter, so we can see that on the big.
All right, hang on.
I meant the book first.
I have to move my mic. And then
Oh, the book. Oh, yeah.
And then,
And then we'll come back to the map.
then I have to refocus here.
Yeah, we got to see the book.
Whoa, look at that.
Sorry, the microphone's in the way.
Oh, you can, okay.
And I'm focusing.
Well, I might just go pull the seven pillars. It's called the Seven Pillars of Wisdom. Wow, that's really cool.
And by the way, if you really want, there's two books I recommend if you really want to understand the history and the dynamics of the Middle East. Seven Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence is the first one. But here's the thing about T.E. Lawrence: he was an incredibly flawed human being, especially after having promised the Arabs. He basically promised the Arabs that they could keep everything from Damascus, from Mecca to Damascus. And then there was a secret treaty that he didn't know about. And so he was as surprised as they were when they told him that they weren't going to fulfill the promise that they made. However, there's a lot of probably pieces of the story that were too painful for him to talk about, that are better covered in his biography by Basil Henry Littlehart. So it's Lawrence of Arabia by Basil Littlehart. I will put both books on the book section of the Duke Report. The Duke Report has a book section, and in as much as I can cover as many of the books that I've read, that John O'Loughlin's read, that you guys talk about, I try to put as many of those books as possible in that section so that people just have a quick reference place where they could go find that stuff. So,
well, I want to take you from the Middle East to Moscow in 1990, if I could be so bold. Okay.
We're going back here, right?
Okay, well, let's go to Kazakhstan first. Let's go to the Felix Sater hot dog, uranium hot dog stand, along with the bioweapons hot dog stand.
Okay, so this is Almaty that you were talking about, and Almaty is, I put it, just because George Webb says pipelines tell you everything that's going on, I just wanted to let you know there is this pipeline that's running right here too, George. So
nice, I love those. Yeah.
Okay, so Almaty, where are we going next?
So if you go to the Black Sea, which is going to be either Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia, or you can go to Odessa.
Okay, so
now, if Black Sea is the one that looks like
this is Azov, right? Azov?
No, that's the Ural Caspian. Okay. That's the Caspian Sea. That's where all the oil is. Okay. So right over there, yeah. And now they've discovered big, huge reserves, just as much as the Caspian.
Oh, yeah, here's
the Black Sea, which makes this all the more important, right?
Here, let me turn off the pipelines.
Yeah, and if you go to the political map here, See that thing that looks like a baseball diamond, where first base, second base, third base, home base is Crimea, that sticks out into the Black Sea.
Oh, Crimea is right here.
Yeah, third base is where the Russians have their Navy nuclear sub base.
Sevastopol.
Sevastopol. Then that's home plate is what I'm saying, and then Sevastopol is a little bit up at third base. Okay, there. And then the original place where bioweapons were used for the first time is at first base, which is it's called Feodosia, but it was called Kaffa. That was the first place bioweapons were ever used. This is also where the war in the 1840s occurred with the Crimean War with the British, landing in Sevastopol and the charge of the Light Brigade. And it's also the place where Crimea, Congo, had hemorrhagic fever first was thought of, not isolated, but one Florence Nightingale almost died of Congo Crimea hemorrhagic fever. And if you go over a little bit to the left, you'll see Odessa, which is where Battleship Potemkin happens. You know that baby carriage scene, Peter, with Battleship
The Odessa
Potemkin?
Steps. Yeah.
The Odessa Steps with the battleship.
By the way, Crimea also is almost like the birthplace of the bad pun, right? Because Crimea River was invented there.
Right over there, just right over by the BioLab, actually.
Yeah.
And then if you go up that river, right, and I don't think Odessa's on the Dnieper. It's actually a little bit further down. But if you go over to Kiev, this is going to be where, if you go up the Dnieper, the Dnieper is to your right there.
I'm trying to figure out why I haven't turned off these pipelines, but okay, Dnieper.
There's the Dnieper, and then
This
as you
is
go,
the Dnieper, right?
Yep, as you go up that river, you'll see Kiev.
Yep,
That's
right
where
here.
that's where the bioweapons Cossack dance. You can put the high octane speculation meter on now.
Okay, here we go. Banners, boom. Okay, high octane speculation.
That's where the Christopher Steele Cossack dance occurred for bioweapons. When the bioweapons arrive there in 91, after the fall of the Soviet Union, remember there's all these loose nukes and loose bios. A lot of them land right here. Okay, and I'll give you evidence of that. But we know he was married here in 1990. We know he did in Kiev, not Russia. He was in Russia for the fall of the Soviet Union, but he's here in 1990 marrying his wife in Kiev. Now, if you're from, what's your guy's name again in Wales? That's
Johnny Vedmore.
Johnny Vedmore. You would pick out a place like where he married his second wife near, I don't know, Winchester Cathedral, Salisbury Cathedral, someplace in England. But no, he gets married here in Kiev, and he does the Cossack dance. He does the Cossack dance at the wedding. Now, that seems to be kind of a traditional Russian Cossack dance. It doesn't seem to be something that happens in Wales. My Fair Lady, you waltz or something like that.
Because Christopher Steele is Welsh. Is that the deal?
I think he's English. He went to school at Cambridge, but he lives near Wales. I don't know if Salisbury's in Wales or not, but I'm just saying here that the Cossack dance seems to be a very Russian thing, a Russian wedding. Okay. I sent you some footage of the Cossack dance, and they have.
I have it queued, but I have to get rid of this in order to put that up. So I'll do that. Hang on a second.
But this is something that you do. It's called the Cossack wedding dance, and where they're like they're half the size of a normal human and they're kicking their legs out. That's the Cossack dance, and they do it at weddings. And Christopher Steele does that. Now, is he celebrating bioweapons coming from Moscow or coming from Kazakhstan, where we just focused in? That's the high octane speculation part of this. But the part that isn't speculation is after he's in Moscow, at the fall of Moscow, he's down here doing the high. Here we go.
So Christopher Steele gets married. And when was this, George?
I believe he got married in 1990, after the fall of the Soviet Union. Lots of knife play.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah,
please
maybe I
welcome
could
us
turn
up
the
with
volume
Ukrainian
down and then
Cossacks.
we can talk over it. What do we think?
Now we can talk over it.
Yeah.
Now you're going to see the Cossack dance that's performed at the traditional weddings. I even sent Peter a copy of the Cossack dance for the Manchester Orchestra. Okay, but the big idea here is it's a very traditional Russian type celebration, or it's even more Cossacks Cossacks were sent by the Tsar to go subdue the pogroms, the Jewish settlements in what
They were
called
the Cossacks were basically his SA, right? They were
Yes.
his stormtroopers.
They were there to suppress the Kolomoiskis and so forth. The pogroms, they called it, in what they call the Pale Settlement. Okay, so a lot of people remember when the Cossacks came to their town and they killed all the women and children, that kind of thing. Okay, these guys can jump, but you're going to see the Cossack. Here we go. You're going to see the Christopher Steele is right there. That's high octane speculation. But I'm guessing that there was a few Ukrainians at this wedding. I'm guessing that there was a few Russians at this wedding. Now, if you didn't know this, you remember that thing I talked about earlier, the atomic weapons establishment? Well, the wife, the bride, I mean, all of Christopher Steele's family's from England. So I'm thinking that the bride's side of the family is the Russian or the Ukrainian. And that's what maybe high octane speculation. Maybe Christopher Steele's really Russian and I didn't know that. But you get the idea here is it's a melding of two families and the wedding is in Kiev. Okay. So now he turns out the father was named David Hunt. I don't know if that's his given name, given the Cossack wedding here. He's Russian speaking, fluent, completely fluent. Maybe he learned in school, but he works at the atomic weapons establishment. And he comes up with a new type of laser that actually can use human breath. I'm not kidding. It's called the breath laser. Not the breath laser, the breath laser.
And how is this guy related to Christopher Steele?
It's the father of his wife. He's there.
He's his father-in-law.
Yes.
How does this laser breath thing work? This is gold. This is like James Bond.
It's better than James Bond because most lasers, I know this is they take a gas, a noble gas, and they excite a noble gas. Okay. And the really cool part about exciting a noble gas, you've seen a lot of neon lights, right? They give off light. And if you channel that light through a series of self-reflecting things, you get a laser, okay? And those gases could be, helium and various neon, etc. But what the innovation that was made by Christopher Steele's father-in-law with the breath laser was that you could use regular breath. You could use carbon and you could use a nitrogen to fire the laser, which is really important because you could use it in a terrorist tracking application, for instance. Just by somebody breathing out. You could tell somebody if they have diabetes just by the alkalines in their breath. Obviously, we have the breathalyzer for the police. But being able to analyze the breath is kind of a security application, potentially. You could even see maybe somebody's DNA at some point if you could catch their water molecules that are leaving their breath. So it's just an interesting thing. That he is doing it. He's recognized by the Queen. This is the Center Laser Laboratory for all of England, National Laboratory at Aldermaston. And also it becomes the European Center of Expertise with lasers. The other thing you can do with a laser, though, is you can separate plutonium from uranium. You excite the molecules in such a way that you cause a diffusion. You have a charge plate or a centrifuge or something, and now you're laser separating uranium from plutonium. One of the hardest problems there is. That's where Bob Mueller was trying to do that in Delaware at a plant called a Silec plant in Delaware. So isn't it
Bob
interesting?
Mueller the second?
Bob Mueller the first.
The first.
The first. Or Bob Mueller the third. which is the guy who did the Trump dossier and tried to get Trump out. That guy was the one who was sponsoring the Silex laser, one of the groups sponsoring. But my point here is, this seems to be, I'm just guessing, but if one guy is doing the breath of laser here, would some of the other friends, you know, be the friends from work? I don't know. But, you know, the Cossack thing and everything, would we have maybe a group of scientists here, maybe 5 or 6 or 10? Because we know that Christopher Steele later was involved in moving scientists to Ukraine. And he's also involved in moving the things they were working on, which is uranium for the nuclear scientists, and it's the bioweapons for the bioweapons scientists. And let me tell you, if you're out there in Kazakhstan at the Felix Sater hot dog stand, coming to the Black Sea and living on the beach, a big upgrade. And that, I think, is the big untold, high-octane speculation. This is the big untold story, is the bioweapons move there. How do we know that their bioweapons are there? Because now we know 30 years later they never destroyed them like the WHO asked them to. We know they're there. So for 30 years, the WHO has said destroy these. They should have been destroyed. They haven't been destroyed them. They've been working on them, tinkering on them, coming up with new vaccines, doing live exercise releases with these Big Bite and Big Itch programs. And oh, by the way, I think the same people that are doing the throwing the mud at Trump are the ones actually protecting their own program over the last 30 years. Done with my high octane speculation, but the Cossack dancing is no speculation.
All right. Maybe we should, I see we have a huge number of comments, so we should probably.
Let's do comments.
We've got a question here from Bob K.
Love Bob
Have you
K.
been able to contact Dilyana G about an interview yet? And are you still going to England soon, whether Dilyana G will be present or not in London?
Yes, I am going soon. Bob's in Australia, but I will be going soon. Maybe not this week now, just because of some legal stuff, but maybe next week. And I do want to get to Salisbury. I do want to get to, I love going to these places. Here's the ground zero of bioweapons with all the people getting poisoned. The Scripples get poisoned there. Christopher Steele's there. His wife dies, by the way, that he marries here at the age of 43. Fast cirrhosis of the liver. Fast. Interesting, right? That's awful. 43, awfully young to die. Maybe a background there too.
Wow, interesting.
Let's go to the next question.
Yeah, if you want to, I don't know if you have comments already, Peter. I just wanted to ask George what the travel requirements are for England, or if those have changed.
They have changed big time. Boris has said if you're vaccinated, again, I took the hit. You know, I've only lost a little bit of memory. Your name's Addy, right? Okay, yeah. Only a little bit.
Have you stuck any magnets to yourself? Is what I want to know, George.
Yeah. No, I'm okay. But if you're fully vaccinated, that's it. That's all you need. They used to have a test before you go and a test after you go to come back, which is, 15 or 20 pounds, but still a pain in the butt because it has, all that. So.
Okay. So no lepers allowed yet.
Right. And in Ireland, I think if Donnie O'Sullivan, I think you're free to go, if you want to go make up stories and false narratives for NATO at Storyful, you can get on a plane tomorrow and land.
Are they in Ireland? Storyful is?
Well, Storyful had a London office, but their really big office was in Dublin. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. They contacted me during the trial because they wanted some of my footage. But yeah, it was just St. Patrick's Day this week, so we might be onto something there, George.
False narratives, we got them.
So, are you going to go to Wales?
Yes.
Maybe we should warn Johnny that you're coming.
Well, maybe he should meet me at a pub. Let's go to the pub in Andover. I don't think Andover is quite yet Wales, but I do have some interesting. I sent you an article from the Gwyneth newspaper. If you ever, Peter, you're a film aficionado and director and all that. What's the movie that's done in Wales? How Green Is My Valley by John Huston. Mm-hmm. The scene where they're all coming in, all the miners are coming in singing. That's a great piece of cinema verite there. But yeah, I'm going to be going to Wales. Salisbury is awfully close to Wales if it's not in Wales. And
Isn't
then
there's a tank proving ground there, and Stonehenge is there, right?
Stonehenge is there.
Yeah.
And very close to where Portondown is the place, though. That's bioweapons ground zero. And so I definitely want to go close to there. And then in Portsmouth, which is not too far, the nearest port in Southampton's close, is where they did sea spray. Where they actually sprayed the English population in the 50s with sea spray, just like they did in San Francisco here and in Norfolk, Virginia here with bioweapons, mild bioweapon. Yeah.
Well, terrific.
Any more comments there that you had saved? Or
I don't see any questions. I see lots of comments, but I don't see a lot of. We can go through the comments, but
there was one from. I actually don't know how he found our chat this evening, but he was asking George, or he's asking about George, something to do with cars and the Awans. It was a while. It was like at the beginning of the chat. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Well, Hina Alvey, we went up to Fort Detrick 3 or 4 times with my old partner task force, and Hina Alvey was the one that lived in Frederick. So that was the one we were chasing up there. That was the member of the Awan spy ring that we were chasing up there. And they weren't living together. You know, they had 2 separate houses. Nothing made sense about the story they concocted to say that they were married.
And the truckers are still driving around in circles around Frederick, Maryland, right? They're just...
Are they?
Whatever happened to the American truckers? They just kind of like...
Well, they infiltrate these things, unfortunately, and then they all get in arguments and they start spreading rumors about each other. You know, it's just one of those...
It's hard to organize a group of people. It's very hard. Here's the question. Is he the same George Webb that was driving from city to city about Obama and connections with car dealers, etc.? End quote.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, everybody gets on me because I don't hold Obama responsible. He's actually one of the few presidents that push back like Trump and Kennedy. Okay. And so people don't like me for that, but it's true. He pushed back in Syria and he pushed back a couple of other places with gain of function, for instance. But yeah, I did go to the CIA car dealership 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times with Russian speakers. I always found Russians or Ukrainians there, by the way, not Imran. So yeah, CIA car dealership, is that what could go wrong? You know, they were laundering, and this Natalia Sova was the big untold story. She also had a car dealership there called Easy Car Buying. And Natalia Sova was a Ukrainian operative. Remember, we had 68 or 69 different journalists come in during the 2016 campaign with Chalupa. Lee Stranahan covered that brilliantly. So
don't drop the Chalupa.
Don't drop the Chalupa. I said, Lee, I think that's just a funny name. He goes, no, there's 3 Chalupa sisters. And then later he admitted that they weren't related. But anyway, there was a lot of Ukrainian influence. George Soros was the key donor to our Library of Congress, so that all the spy operations are protected under speech.
And who's the head of IT for the Library of Congress?
It was
the son,
Nellie Orr's son.
Nellie Orr's son, right? Yeah.
Chris Orr. I think it was Chris Orr. Yeah. And
So
then, of course, the other Orr. I can't remember.
Bruce.
Either or?
Either Orr.
Either or Nellie or Bruce.
It was one of those 2.
Right.
So, okay.
I went out and got my
Nellie,
ham radio license because I was trying to figure out why Nellie Orr had a ham radio license. And I discovered something called digital modes. Have you ever heard of digital modes, George?
Sure. You can send like text messages over single sideband type radio, 2-meter radio.
Over any HF, any radio you want. You can send it as.
Yep.
In fact, that's the main thing is to use like a JS8 call is one program. WinLink is another, and you can hook your computer up to a ham radio, and you can send messages thousands of miles. It's illegal though to send encoded messages. Although I don't know how you would ever get caught or how that would ever wind up becoming a thing.
Well, NSA does have a thing called total spectrum dominance and total spectrum awareness. So they actually are supposed to, the whole spectrum.
That would be a good TV show about the guy who's in charge of monitoring ham radio for the NSA. And like,
hey, breaker 19. We got transport logistics convoy going around again.
Some old guy. Yeah, that would be pretty funny.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, I see this comment here about the Erasmus lab, and is the H5N1 that they were vectoring out of the Erasmus lab with this project called Ukraine Project 4, was that the H5N1, weaponized H5N1 that was developed at the Erasmus lab? I say if they're going to weaponize H5N1, they're going to use the weaponized H5N1 from that lab. And Addy went to the lab, the sister lab in Wisconsin, the Kawaoke lab.
Yeah, in Madison. Yeah, research park there in Madison, Wisconsin. I think it's on Science Drive on the west side, kind of close to the mall, a little bit there. And his office too, at the biotech building, which is, I want to say, well, even like the assistants, they have to get security clearance to go into that building. But when I went, it was, I think, just the start of the second semester. No, it was winter break, and every building was pretty much locked down. Not due to that though, it was because of the COVID rules. So, but yeah, Kawaoka, FluGen, Ron Fouchier, H5N1, gain of function. He's appeared on panels with Fauci, who wasn't he just in the news again this morning, I think?
Oh, Fauci was? Wow.
Or no, Fauci. Sorry.
Oh, Fauci, yeah.
Kawaoka and Fauci.
Who's Fauci?
Yeah.
Oh, that was a long time ago, Fauci, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Before the war, yeah.
Before the war.
The war is supposed to erase your memory of that. Yeah. But
I love using that now. It's like, that was a long time ago. That was before the war.
That's going to be the mental dividing line in our generation, the war. The war.
Look, people don't have I can't remember the name of the attention span. People don't have the attention span of a tweet anymore. You know, it's like they really stretched it when Twitter went from, 160 characters to 220 or something. They really like pushed the envelope of people's ability to comprehend a thought from one moment to the next.
You kind of put me on the hot coals the other day when we were looking at 2-minute and 20-second Twitter pieces, because you're saying, no, you got to shorten them down to a minute. Get into the like YouTube Shorts and the TikToks.
Mark is doing like 1 minute videos now.
Yeah. I might go back and cut all my 2 minutes and 20 seconds down to the best 1 minute and just put them all back out. So I saw somebody asking about the president of the Clinton Foundation, Eric Braverman, and we said he wouldn't sign the dark weapons off. The Clinton Global Initiative was trying to move in all the profits from dark weapons, and that was coming through a guy named Frank Justra, a Canadian businessman involved in uranium in Kazakhstan.
Started Lionsgate
with Felix the cat down in Mexico, the richest guy down in Mexico. We said if he was going somewhere, if his life was in danger and he was fleeing, he would be in Israel and he would be with the guy who's running the dark weapons, right? And everyone said, I made it up. And who did he end up being with? Kolomoisky. He was meeting with Kolomoisky 6 years ago, right? So all roads lead to Kolomoisky. And we said Kolomoisky had a thing in Geneva. Ed Flaherty was one of the guys in Luke Rosiak's book who was running the Ambassador Club. I'm not making this up. In Geneva, literally putting the money in from Congress, and then Kolomoisky's taking it out of the fishbowl and putting it in a safe. Not kidding, right? A not high-octane speculation. And then the other place he had was Kiev, where they had this basically Abwehr, intelligence organization called the National Anti-Crime Bureau. It's always the opposite of what they say it is. National Anti-Corruption Bureau. NABU was actually a kind of an SS intelligence Gestapo. And that's what Strzok had used to go after Trump. It's the same hackers with Dmitry Alperovich with the encrypted Blackberries. It's the same intelligence organization. It's the same contact, Kolomoisky, all the way. And everybody's just commenting.
Yep, they are. Well, with that, perhaps we should say adieu.
That sounds fine. We'll pick
Can
it
we
up
do
right
it again next week?
Yeah, let's do it again next week.
Should we all pimp our own things?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do some pimping.
I'll pimp the Duke report. I built the Duke report about a month ago. Traffic is growing every day, and it's a RSS fed news page. So I don't actually curate anything except the sources on the news on the Duke report. So as people update their own websites, the headlines change on the Duke report. And so if you want a great kind of collection of independent journalists who are all doing fine work, then check out the Duke report. And I urge you to bookmark it because in this age of censorship, it's very difficult to find people on a day-to-day basis. I know that it's been an ongoing issue for me. So I thought that I would take all of the research that I put into trying to find people and put it in one place for everybody. And there's some other resources in there. Like I said, I linked to the books that are mentioned in a lot of the things that we're talking about. I give you more than one source. If you click on the Amazon link, I do make a little bit of money on that. But I also link to whatever, if there's a Scribd version of it. Scribd is $10 a month, all you can eat. Scribd often has digital books and audio books. I also link to the Internet Archive of books, and a lot of times there's PDFs available of these books, so I link to those. So if you go check out the book section, the book and resource section on the Duke report, you can find a lot of different source material for the things that we talk about. And then if you have gone to the Duke report and you're looking for a story that you saw a few minutes ago or a few days ago, there's a link that says the last 10 stories, and it'll show you the last 10 stories that Mark Kulak posted, or the last 10 stories that Addy Ads or George Webb posted. Although they don't post as much as some of the other people on the site. And then once a day, what I'll do is I'll try to read as many of the stories as I can, and I'll find the one that I think is the most important story of the day, and then I put that up on the top of the page. So that's my pimping for the Duke report, TheDukereport.com. There it is.
Cool.
Wait, I can't hear George.
I don't have any way of making money other than I am on Venmo, so GEOWEBB, but I could use it. But I just got this late breaking news that Patrick Berge, right? You remember when he talked about Clearview, and they're using it in General James Jones, the head of NATO, right? But this was his thing for AI.
Yeah, well, that was a big.
Didn't you just tell me that yesterday?
No, that was a big story yesterday.
But I mean, Berge was talking about this 2 years ago when I interviewed him in Florida, right? I mean, Clearview.
Not about Clearview. I was working with Clearview, and Jason Goodman made a big deal out of it.
Oh, you had Clearview, but wasn't that also a spinoff of Clearview? Wasn't AIA a spinoff of Clearview?
No, Clearview AI is the technical name of the company, and it's a facial recognition company.
Well, I remember you showing it to me when you were working, but there you go, Peter. Your technology is being used in Ukraine.
Well, it's not. Yeah. Here's the hidden. Here's the little secret, and I told Addy this yesterday. The little secret about Clearview AI is that Clearview AI is not really a technology company. Because if anybody watching this right now goes to Google and types in facial recognition API, there are dozens of companies that sell similar technology to Clearview. Clearview's competitive advantage is that they've been scraping publicly available databases of faces for like 5 or 6 years now. So they have billions and billions of faces in their database. That's their advantage over everybody else.
Via a legal loophole.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I do not believe that Clearview AI is better than anything that Google probably has internally or Facebook has internally, because my guess is that Facebook and Google have been working on this with hundreds of people for as long as they've been in business, and that they just choose not to talk to anybody. I mean, at one point, Facebook did turn that technology on. At one point, Apple did turn that technology on and said, oh, it looks like you know this person, because they started scanning your pictures and IDing people in your family photographs and stuff and asking you if you wanted to follow them. People thought that it was so creepy that they turned it off. But Like I said, Facebook's got this technology, Google's got this technology, Apple's got this technology. I'm sure Microsoft has this technology, and they all have APIs that you can, if you have a database, you can hook up to their APIs and then you can run with it.
Well, see how we learn even doing our own pimping?
Yeah.
So I'll just say that I'm real George Webb at 1 because my original one, which was easy to remember, got hacked mercilessly. So, but I'm back up to 40,000. I went all the way down to 0 again and got my whole following back after the hack. So real George Webb, the numeral 1. And Addy, over to you, brother.
Yeah, I'm at 1 Addy ads, 1 spelled out on Twitter. I'm also on Getter, but with the changing tactics and strategies, really trying to go where the eyeballs are, while at the same time growing other channels like Rockfin, rockfin.com/Addy ads. And I'm writing a lot more article length stuff now on my Substack, which is what Peter is in part featuring in his RSS feeds on his new website, thedukereport.com. As well as my usual interviews. And somebody mentioned buying my books. Please do. My second book, How to Cover the Ghislaine Maxwell Trial, novella length about coverage of the trial. Got some very high praise.
And where did they get those, Addy?
Amazon.com. If you type in Addy ads, it'll pop up. I think it's the second link. Otherwise, you can type in the Ghislaine Maxwell Trial. It should pop up as well. And got some high praise from Charlie Robinson, which was great. #1 best-selling author, and he's released a few books: Controlled Demolition of the United States, I believe, or the American Empire, Hippocracy, about cultural double standards, and then Roberta Glass as well, the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, who I actually hung out with last night, and Peter Duke, media technologist and photographer as well. So I want to give a shout out to those people. And then for support, buymeacoffee.com or Venmo as well. And thanks to Wes for the recent Venmo. So shout out to him. And then I mentioned the Convo Couch tips last week too. So
yep, you can buy me a coffee too. Several people have bought me coffee, and I appreciate it. I need the caffeine.
Me too. Well, on that note, guys, let's tip our coffee cups. You could buy World War DARPA at Neighborhood News. All the money goes to them to support citizen journalism.
All right, I have a LaCroix.
Peter's drinking gross LaCroix, limoncello, gross. But I got Celsius here. You can't really see it. It's got 200 milligrams of caffeine. I prefer it because it has biotin. It's got really good vitamin C levels, much better than Monster, which is just like a bunch of vitamin B, and that's it. So that's tea, basically, is what I would be drinking, or in this case, a healthy energy drink. So if people want to do that, more than welcome to. And we're going to be doing this same time next week, right, gents? Is that the case?
Indeed.
4 Eastern, 1 West Coast time.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.